Welcome back. If you're just here for the conversation, we are here at Grace on Fire, and we are so grateful and honored. We just finished a beautiful highlight. Please watch that if you haven't. And now we're moving into our conversation portion of Grace on Fire with Michelle Velez. Beautiful, radiant Michelle, and she has an amazing story for us. And that's on our highlight. We're going to go into it a little bit more in our conversation about what she's been through and how she's been helping other people, and maybe she can help you if you've struggled with some of the similar things. So welcome again, Michelle.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Let's begin with you. You've had an amazing struggle, a very, very hard struggle over the last year or so with a very rare form of cancer that no one knows in the world. I hadn't heard about it until I had found out about you. Mm-hmm. Would you like to share that with the world, with people today?
Absolutely. I was diagnosed with a rare form of cancer caused by a pregnancy. And it is something that most people have never heard of, myself and my family included. My mom is an RN, so a registered nurse. So she had heard of the condition that led to the cancer, which is a molar pregnancy. Most nurses, or all medical professionals, I should say, have to learn about it, I think, at some point. But most of them never see it in their practice because it's that rare. About 1 in 1,000 pregnancies end up in a molar pregnancy, which is what I had. And a molar pregnancy is, there's different types of situations. So you can have a molar pregnancy, a complete molar pregnancy, which is what I had. An invasive mole is what it's technically called. And basically what happens is in my case, I got pregnant and there was a fertilization of the egg, but there was not a viable fetus. It never formed. However, the placenta from that pregnancy, instead of miscarrying like it should have naturally, it continued to grow. And the molar pregnancy is where the tissue from that placenta starts to grow invasively. And in some cases, it can be a complete molar where it's just the placenta and the tissue from the placental tissue, and it grows and it kind of fills up the uterus. Some cases, it could happen in a partial molar is where there's a molar, but there's also a baby in there. That has happened. Sometimes it can happen after you deliver. You deliver, have your baby, the baby is healthy, and the molar starts to grow and the placental tissue starts to invade. What happens is because it's placental tissue, your body thinks you're pregnant. So it makes your HCG levels, which is the pregnancy hormone in your body, which gives you a positive pregnancy test and morning sickness and food aversions and all of those fun, symptoms of pregnancy. It's all caused from HCG. Well, what happens in a molar pregnancy is your HCG skyrockets to astronomical amounts. So wow. Where I was at about 10 weeks pregnant when we figured out that it was not a baby. Well, we figured out at 6 weeks that there was nothing in there, and I wanted to naturally miscarry, and it should have happened. There's no reason to believe that it wouldn't have happened because it was so early along, and it should have just gone out like it would normally do in a miscarriage, and that was it. And then you wait a few months and try again. Well, my body started to mimic pregnancy, and my HCG level at around 10 weeks when we realized it was a molar pregnancy should have been about 25 to 35,000. Mine was 800,000.
My goodness.
So basically what that's equivalent to is being pregnant with 6 babies at one time. So much HCG. I was so sick. I could not function. I was throwing up. I mean, imagine the worst morning sickness you can possibly imagine on steroids is what I had. And I could not figure out what was going on because I knew that I did not have a viable pregnancy. I knew there was not a baby in there, but my body was getting more and more pregnant. I wasn't showing yet, but my HCG was going up. I was getting super sick. I was having food aversions. I was so tired. I couldn't function. At the time, I was still at work. So I was still doing my newscasts. I was still going out and reporting. And my doctor had told me, be prepared, because at any point, the bleeding will happen when you finally miscarry. Well, I started to have some bleeding, but nothing that would be, nothing that you would expect with a miscarriage. So I was very confused, because I was thinking, am I having a miscarriage, or am I still pregnant? What is happening? Go back to the doctor, and that's when we discovered the molar pregnancy. And when he pulled up the sonogram to check the inside of the uterus, there was this very weird phenomenon going in there. It looked like a cluster of grapes. It was like these little circles, and they were all clustered together. And I saw it, and he saw it, and he said, or well, at the time it was the nurse. I saw it and thought to myself, what is that? The doctor comes in after reviewing the sonogram and says, how do you feel? And I said, I feel horrible. And he said, well, that's because you're not having a miscarriage. You have a molar pregnancy. Well, I had never heard of that. I did not know what it was. I did not understand what was happening. So he's trying to explain this to me. And at the time he said, it's about 1 in 1,000 pregnancies. What we need to do is do a D&C. We need to evacuate everything from the uterus, and then your HCG will drop. And then once it gets down to 0, then the part you're not going to like, he tells me, is you're not going to be able to try to get pregnant again for a whole year. And that's because in order to make sure that the molar went away, we need to track your HCG, and you cannot have any HCG in your system. If you get pregnant, your HCG will go up, and then we won't know if the tissue has returned. And he did mention in some very rare cases this can turn into cancer, but we have no reason to believe. I mean, that is so rare. That's like 1% is what I was told. So don't worry about it. It's okay. This is what we need to do. At the time, if only I knew that not being able to get pregnant for a year, if only that was my biggest concern. So we did the D&C, and at first my HCG dropped from almost 1 million down to 17,000. So it was going in the right direction. And then the next week it doubled. And then the next week it doubled again. And by the 3rd week it had doubled again. And my doctor called me from Hawaii. He was on vacation, said, I got your HCG results. You have to go see this doctor on Tuesday. And it was an oncologist. And I didn't understand. I said, well, I thought you said this wasn't cancer. Why do I have to go to an oncologist? Well, because it is multiplying tissue. So we need to administer a shot called methotrexate. It is a type of chemo, but not the chemo that's going to make your hair fall out and all that. It's just, we give you the shot until the tissue goes away. And then in most cases, it's fine. But I need to pass you on to them. And thank God for that doctor, honestly, because he knew what it was as soon as he saw it on the screen. A lot of medical professionals have no experience with a molar pregnancy, and a lot of them wouldn't know what it was, but he caught it as soon as we saw it. So I go to the oncologist, and I'm sitting in this room, and I'm scared, and I'm confused, and I am now bleeding profusely. I am passing blood clots the size of my hand. I would have these gushes of blood just come out, and it would look like a murder scene in my bathroom. It was very traumatic. And I was getting very sick again because my HCG was going back up. So they said, let's do a scan. We got to see if it's spreading. And I'll never forget when I met the doctor who runs the practice, and he sat down with me and he said, listen, this could be cancer, but we won't know until we do this scan. Right now, the tissue that we took from your uterus 3 weeks ago shows no signs of cancer. So at this point, we're just calling it a molar pregnancy. And we don't have any reason to think at that point, but something is making your HCG go up. So we need to just do a scan to make sure. And I said, well, if it is, is this like real chemo? Like the kind of chemo that I would have to do that would make my hair fall out? And he said, with all due respect, if you do have cancer and that's what this is, you should be more worried about losing your life than losing your hair. But we'll deal with that when we get the results back. Wow. And that was it was very shocking for me because it was a pregnancy. And how could a pregnancy Now I'm talking about cancer in an office with an oncologist. It was hard for me to wrap my head around it. So I had a scan. I was so sick the day of the scan, I couldn't even drive. My co-anchor, uh, my best friend, she left work and took me to my appointments because my husband was at work, and she was on her. We were done with our show, so she took me to my doctor to the scan, and I did the scan. And the next morning, I was awoken by a phone call from my doctor's office, and they said, the doctor would like to see you. We need to talk to you about your scan results. And I knew right then that it wasn't good news,
Yeah.
because
Oh, yeah, it's never good news, right?
if they call you and say you have to come in and we need to see you in person,
Mhm.
it's usually not good
No.
news.
Yeah.
And I had I got in the car. It was a 35-minute drive, and I called my mom and I called my husband, and I let them know what was going on. And my mom was planning on flying in that night anyways, because I was going to have another DNC the next day. And when I got to the office and finally met with the doctor, she said, well, we were really shocked by your scan results. I'm sorry to tell you this, but you have tissue that has spread to 4 different organs in your body. There are tumors all over your lungs, liver, spleen, and uterus. It is stage 4, and you have to start chemo immediately.
Oh my goodness.
And
What a shock for you at that
and it
moment. Huh?
was the worst day of my life. I just actually marked the 1-year anniversary of that date. It was October 10th, 2019, and I have replayed that moment in my head 1,000 times. And it's really hard to put into words what it feels like to be told you have cancer. It's just something that I don't know. I attribute it to the job that I did every day, but I was super, super paranoid about cancer too. I have interviewed and worked with several people over my years as a journalist and done stories on their cancer journeys. And unfortunately, every single person that I've ever interviewed and worked with has since passed away. So for me to transition now into those shoes, and, of course, I have these 2 little kids at home, and I'm thinking to myself, how is this even possible? It was just very shocking. But I was thrust into it. I got very sick after that. I got my port placed here. This is where the chemo is administered the very next morning at 7 a.m. And I was due to start chemo the following Monday, and I didn't even make it. I had to be admitted into the hospital. I was losing too much blood. The condition, the molar pregnancy, makes you bleed. And so I was literally bleeding for 6 hours straight. And then the next day it was about 5.5 hours straight. And it was just a steady stream of blood coming out. And so I had to have blood transfusions because I was slowly losing blood. And the chemo would have shrunk the tissue, and that would have stopped the bleeding, but you have to give the chemo time to work, and I hadn't even started it yet. So I ended up having 8 blood transfusions. I was in the hospital 6 different times, and I started chemo immediately, and it was a very hardcore regimen called Emico, 5 different chemo medications administered 2 days a week, and I didn't need, it was so bad that the doctor said, normally we give people a week's break in between each chemo cycle, but you really can't afford to do that. So we're going to do it every week for you, and let's see how you handle it. And I did, I handled it pretty well. I was able to tolerate weekly chemo, and I did that for 16 weeks.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
It was, so what I was thrust into this. I realized that, I was very upset at first. I was hysterical. I could not stop crying. And I was told, you have this day to cry and to mourn, but tomorrow you have to start fighting. And you got to try really hard to focus on that. And so that first day I was hysterical, but then the next day I really tried to pull myself together and focus on what I had to do. And, you know, I relied a lot on my faith, and I prayed a lot. And there were times when there was nothing anyone could say. And it was just me and myself and my thoughts. And I just had to turn to my faith and just say it, my prayer. I had a certain verse that I would repeat over and over and over again. And for me, that was really what got me through some of the really hard times. And then I just started documenting everything. My story was picked up by a Yahoo lifestyle writer when I was in surgery so a week went by, and then I publicly announced my cancer diagnosis, just to let the viewers and people know, because I was getting a lot of messages asking where I was. I wasn't on the air. I just stopped going to work one day and never came back. So I just wanted to let people know, and my coworkers. Nobody knew. And when I was in surgery, this Yahoo writer picked it up, and when she wrote this article about what happened to me and about my post, it kind of took off from there. And I did a lot of interviews. I was contacted by a ton of different media I think it was multiple Today Show, CNN. I did the Tamron Hall show, tons of articles online. A lot of local stations all over the country picked it up and, you know, put it into their local newscasts. And so I realized at that point, well, it's out there and people are talking about it. I guess, you know, the headline, local news anchor's pregnancy causes cancer. It's catchy. I don't know. But I realized that this was an opportunity for me to use my platform to not only tell my story, but make women aware of what this is. And you would not believe how many people I started to get messages from all over the world who have had a molar pregnancy or had one, or had the cancer or is going through the cancer, or who had the cancer back in the 60s. And people started reaching out to me left and right. And I was just shocked. It's 1 in 1,000 pregnancies. 1 in 1,000 pregnancies end up as a molar. And so it's rare, but 1 in 1,000 people, when you look at the whole world, is really not that rare. It's just rare enough that you probably won't meet somebody else that has it. But because of the internet and social media, you are connected with people from all over the world who have it. And so I just said, okay, well, I'm going to do what I do, and I'm going to tell stories. I'm going to tell my own story this time. And I just started documenting everything. You know, every doctor's appointment, every chemo, I was able to use my Instagram platform for that. And also when I shaved my head, I did have to shave my head. All my hair started falling out. So I just decided I was over it, and it was painful. So I shaved my head in November, and we recorded it. And it really connected with a lot of other people who have gone through that very traumatic experience of having to lose your hair. It's just awful. And then, you know, and then it became a very therapeutic thing for me. I did not realize how much sharing and talking about my story would help me through it, but it did. And I don't even know all these people out there, but they got me through it. It was amazing.
Like you helped a lot of people as well by allowing them to connect with you and hear your story and what you had been gone through and going through at the time, and they had gone through or were going through at the time. And that is supporting one another is the most important thing when we're going through a challenge. It's a world of difference when you have a support system. And that's what you created for a lot of people. And I acknowledge you for that, Michelle. It's beautiful that you were able to extend that support to so many people.
Thank you. You know, I think most people who get cancer probably do the same thing that I did, which was ask yourself, why me? And it's this horrible question because there's no answer to that. There's no good answer to why anyone gets cancer. But you wonder, why did this happen to me? And for me, I felt like, well, maybe this is why, you know, maybe this is part of the reason is for me to use my platform to help other people through their difficult times, to educate people about molar pregnancies and GTN, which is gestational trophoblastic neoplasia, which is the type of cancer associated with it, and to let people see what going through cancer is really like, because everybody knows somebody who's been affected by cancer, but you don't really see the nitty gritty of it. See you don't see the inside stuff. And it was really important for me to do that. I wanted people to see what it's like, and I wanted people who are going through it to know that they're not alone. And I wanted to educate people, because I feel like any woman of childbearing age should know about this. Why don't we know that there is a type of cancer you can get from a pregnancy? Why is that not common knowledge?
I've never heard of it.
Why do we not know the symptoms to look out for? Because it's very, very sneaky. It mimics a pregnancy. And so you think you're pregnant, but really it's this invasive tissue taking over your body. And if you don't get rid of it, it will continue to grow. Once it's there, you got to get rid of it. But if you don't know that it's there and you think you're pregnant because you took a pregnancy test and it was positive, and your belly starts to grow because it's a tumor, but you think it's a baby, and you're having, morning sickness and all these symptoms, why would you think anything other than pregnancy? But for me, and for a lot of other women that I've connected with, it was a life-threatening form of cancer. And had we not caught it when we did, then I would not be here. So.
Wow. And thank God for your doctor out in Hawaii on vacation. They got the results and called you and told you to get in the next day. I mean, that's a great, amazing doctor that really cares about his patients or her patients, and
he is a great doctor.
Grateful for that.
I'm very grateful for his expertise as a perinatal specialist. And I just feel like women should know. I mean, I think it should be standard that after you deliver a baby, within 6 weeks after delivery, you should take a pregnancy test just to make sure it's negative. I have a friend who I met through this whole thing, and her molar pregnancy developed after her delivery, and it festered. And then she ended up getting, and then it hit really hard, and she had cancer all throughout her body, and she was in a coma for 2 months while they treated her. And she didn't know what was going on, thought they were pregnant again. But if you knew that this could happen, and it was just kind of a standard thing to take a pregnancy test and check and make sure that, your HCG levels are back down to 0, well, then maybe more people would catch it. And that's, of course, after you've had a baby. And then there's, in my case, where you have it from the pregnancy, and it's a little bit harder to catch because you take a pregnancy test and you think you're pregnant and you're wanting to be pregnant, and then it grows into, but there are signs. If your HCG is that high and you're that sick, you should know.
Wow, that's inspiring. You know what I think is the most inspiring about you, Michelle, is you've taken a very challenging, very painful, life-threatening circumstance and situation, and you've used it now for good. You've used it to help other people, to bring more people aware of this particular condition, and also created a lot of support with other people that are going through the same thing. And so you've taken, I always say, and that's what I'm committed to doing with the loss of my beautiful son, is to take that absolutely devastating situation and create it, take those, they say the phoenix, you turn the lead into gold, or the rise from the ashes, and you have risen from the ashes and created a beautiful support system for other people. And awareness is so important. And that is so inspiring about you, Michelle, that you were able to do that. And so many people will take a challenging situation and get lost in it for years and years. but you were able to turn it into your purpose for helping humanity and the world and other people. And that is profoundly inspiring about you.
Thank you. To touch on what you said about, the devastation of losing your son or anything devastating that somebody might be going through. I think it's really important. It really puts things into perspective and trying to to claw your way out of that dark hole. It's really, really hard. And there's a very dark hole that you can get into when you have cancer, because there's so many what ifs, and what if it doesn't work, and what if it comes back, and what if my scan comes back and it's not clear, or what if this treatment doesn't work. I mean, it's really hard to not let your mind get lost in there. And so for me, it's been, also really important to let other people see that, and maybe our trials are different. Mine was cancer, and yours is losing, your son, and somebody else might be going through depression or feeling suicidal, or going through an abusive situation in their home, or whatever it is. But finding a way to see the light, finding a way to figure out how to claw yourself out of that dark hole and see the light and know that life is so precious. And for me, that was the biggest thing. It's like, wow, there were so many things that I haven't done yet because I was waiting for the right time or waiting for enough money. And I'm done waiting. I'm going to do the things now, because if I hadn't survived this, I never would have been at the beach with my kids. I could not wait to take my kids to see the ocean for the first time. We hadn't done that yet. And we just did it over the summer. And I was so thankful to be there. And it was such a little thing. I mean, we're just at a beach. But for me, I was like, well, I didn't know if I was going to be here to see this moment. And so I'm not waiting anymore. I'm going to do what I need to do to fulfill my happiness and fulfill my heart and my soul now, because, you never know when time's up. And if you wait, well, it could be too late. And I think losing somebody or going through something like this, you really realize how precious life is, and how easy it is to get lost in that dark hole.
Oh yeah, and you take those simple things, those little things, you don't take them for granted anymore. You don't take anything for granted. I have grandchildren, and of course I have my daughter too, but the life, it's wow. I don't take anything for granted since my son has passed. And I understand that dark hole. I was in that deep dark hole for a long time, and I remember saying to my son, help me crawl out of this, help me crawl out of this. And I remember one day he said to me, and I talk to my son, it's no mystery, I openly channel his messages for humanity. And he said to me very bluntly, he's very blunt, he said, Mom, you're in a chronic low vibration. It's understandable. However, I'm going to help you to get into a chronic high vibration. And that was probably maybe a year ago, because it took me about 3 years to start to really shift my vibration. It was really a deep, dark hole. And that has been my focus. That's been a focus of a lot of his messages for humanity, has been to raise your vibration up. You're stuck in a vibrational thought sphere, like on a radio station. Just change the station. It's something that everyone is empowered to do. They can just shift their vibrational. And he gave me certain things, like he gave me the affirmation, thank you. Like you used a reading that you used to repeat. And I tell you, there were some mornings where I had so much dread and grief and anxiety and sadness that I couldn't get out of bed, and I would sit and I would just chant, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, for 15, 20, sometimes an hour, until my vibration shifted. But that actually was the most powerful practice, and I still use it today. Even this morning I was feeling a little down, and I started saying thank you, thank you, thank you for probably 15 minutes, and that shifted my vibration, and I was able to get up and go on with my day. And here we are together, you and I. So yeah, helping other people when we've been in that deep dark hole, helping other people find ways to get out and to support them is so powerful.
I think also, mental control.
Mm-hmm.
Gosh, it's so hard to just lose control of that. For me, it was a verse, the Lord does not give us the spirit of fear, but of power and love and a sound mind. And it speaks to me because you have to just find that sound mind and figure out how to, for me and my faith, give it to God and know that, you don't have control of this moment. That was very profound for me when I was being wheeled into surgery and the doctor said, well, we don't know what the outcome of the surgery is going to be. And if we have complications that we're worried about, you may not be able to start chemo for 6 weeks and you can't afford to wait 6 weeks. I had no control over that. I had to either bleed out and not have the surgery and continue to have, blood transfusions every single day, or have faith that this surgery was going to work and that it was going to cure my problem so I could start chemo. And that's what I was facing. And I was being wheeled into surgery and I just closed my eyes and I said it over and over and over and over and over again until I felt that peace. So I can relate to what you're saying with your affirmation. Sometimes you just got to talk yourself down off that ledge.
Absolutely.
That's what I did all the time.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. John calls it the unconscious voice, and we need to move up into the conscious voice.
Yeah.
That is in the level of the God of your understanding. He sees this expanded place where we can get out of. Well, Michelle, thank you so much for this beautiful conversation. I'm so grateful to have you on Grace on Fire, Michelle Velez.